I would say that to improve on these, we should ensure that we get out of the box. Members have been used to, let's take for instance, let's talk of my country, Kenya. We have been talking of politics since January to how should we make that these news of politics, you are getting out of that box of bringing daily news on politics? What else do you focus on that members or citizens or the consumers of that news are getting new to their table? You have been talking of politics, high cost of living. What is new on the table that you're bringing today on a
Yeah.
7 p.m.? So I
Right.
think that the issue of consumption, the issue that you give to the audience concerning daily updates should vary and get a unique thing that can change at least. What are the achievements that are being brought from our communities? You had talked earlier about how to bring up our vulnerable communities to be heard, their voice to be heard. Professor talked about an issue of portraying the society in a positive way, not only in a negative ways. Let's say, for example, you have been giving news on Kibra, how Kibra is growing one of the largest slums in Africa. What else are you bringing on the table about Kibra that is not giving it a negative perspective to the audience or consumers outside there? I'll just say that to be unique and bring out, to be an outstanding on and get off the theme that news are boring. It's just getting a unique way in which you can deliver your news to the audience or the
Right.
consumers of that audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob.
Jacob, thank you so much. Received loud and clear. Now, because Jacob is from radio, and we've heard that, I'm so sorry, Faiza, Gen Z, they want to see pictures. They're not interested in radio. So, but radio is one of those mediums where they have really loyal followings. So, what can we learn about retaining audiences from what you know of radio?
Thank you so much. First of all, I like the fact that you started off with Gen Zs. You specified the age group that we're talking about. Because when we say youth, it's a very general term, right? It's a very general term, and yet when you break it down a little bit further, it goes down to Gen Zs and millennials. I'm a millennial. He's probably a Gen Z, and that means that our interests are very different. He's a digital native, whereas I'm a digital migrant. Okay, I've lived in a time where the internet doesn't exist, and also lived in a time where the internet is there.
Needs to be fact
He's
checked.
probably only known he has probably only known the internet ever since. Okay. Now, when it comes to radio, and what we do is that we visualize our audience. Okay, we visualize our audience from an individual perspective, and that is how we try to reach and make whatever content we put out there interesting and relevant to that person. So when we say that we are speaking to young people, we have decided either we're speaking to a millennial or a Gen Z. We're not everywhere, okay? And when we decide that we're speaking to a millennial, we know exactly what that millennial likes, what their ambitions look like, what their goals look like, what they eat, how they spend their day. So we've done our research, okay? And everything that we create, from the news that we actually bring forward to them, that is carefully researched information. We
Yeah.
know that this person probably, as a millennial, has ambitious goals of starting up his career, business. So when we bring business news, we know it's relevant to them, because one of the core issues about journalism is that you bring what is relevant to your audience, right? So that is the same with radio. Whatever we bring to you is relevant to you, thereby attracting your attention and retaining your attention.
Of course, one of the things that we're discussing when it comes to media viability is creating communities who identify with the content that you're creating. But I imagine that it's very difficult for somebody who's broadcasting internationally to create that sense of community. And yes, yet in radio they're able to. We've heard someone there who says, as part of their daily commute, they listen to BBC Radio. How does radio do this?
I think for radio, I think it's very simple things that we actually do. They're very simple, small details that you don't realize, but they actually make you feel part of a community. So we don't say like, guys, are you part of this thing? No, we say, Edith, how are you doing today? So we make you feel like we're speaking to you as an individual rather than, an entire group of people. So because we listen to radio individually, right? So that is one thing that we actually do, the small little things to make you feel like you're more connected with us. We're connecting with you as an individual rather than a group of people, okay? So that makes you feel like you're part of something big, okay? And the other thing that we do to speak or become even more relevant is that, again, we create content that is relevant, and not just the way content is, not that just content that is relevant, but also how we package and deliver it is the A game. It's the bullseye of radio, okay? Because you can script an amazing radio show, but execution is everything. So execution is what ideally makes people love and feel part of us and feel like it's a community, okay? So when we talk about things from politics, we make sure that these are things that we bring back home to you, okay? And the execution of it is that we bring it back home. For example, today morning, we're talking about the police merging, police posts. But the question was, the engagement point was, is the police in your community effective?
Right.
So you bring it back home and you make them feel like they should engage.
Right. So local change, global impact.
Absolutely.
Okay, Methia, I want to come to you because it seems like you're on the other side completely as a YouTube content creator, a market which I must admit is very saturated. How do you even get those first 10 subscribers when I'm going on YouTube, I'm looking on my phone, I'm scrolling through Instagram, my sister is trying to show me something on TikTok? I mean, that's a lot of competition.
Yeah, thank you so much, Edith. She inspires me. I wanted to say that. As a YouTube creator, there's a lot I do, but at the same time, I'm a content creator for different apps like social media. I use Twitter, I use Instagram, all the other social media platforms. But what I can say is the youth are distracted. Like, there's a lot we are hearing from all angles. You want to watch news, but there's a lot going on your phone. You're probably chatting with your friends or having a conversation on Twitter, dragging this one. There's so much that happens on Twitter. But one thing I understand about the youths is they get their news from social media. That's basically for most of us. Because we've grown up using phones, we've used gadgets like ever since, unlike our mothers or our elders who didn't have these phones. So the first thing for me is, let me check out Twitter. Then the other thing about news, it's actually boring when you're watching it on TV. The reason I'm saying that is because...
Hold on a second. So the moment that news gets on YouTube, it's suddenly interesting, or what are you saying?
No, the reason, here is my reason. There's people chatting and they're giving their opinions. The same thing with Twitter. When you post something, people are going to come and say, it's not like this, it's not like this. This is how it's supposed to be. Like, there's an argument and it's interactive. But with TV, you're listening to that, you're watching that, that is it. Like, what they give you is what you get, which is the difference with social media.
Yeah.
So I feel like people get more of their news from social media. And I think you asked about how I managed to get my subscribers on YouTube. Most people know I use Twitter a lot, and that's what actually helped me. As like I said, I have like social media, I do it a lot, and you just go ask your followers and they subscribe. That's what made it easy for me. But I feel like consistency matters. The more you upload, people keep seeing your content and they like it, and they'll keep following.
Okay, and one final question before we break into our different sessions is, how do we make sure that as we move forward in this digital era, we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution now, that we don't leave people who are digitally illiterate behind, that my grandmother will still be able to get access to the news whether or not it's on YouTube? That's a question for you, Methia.
Well, thank you so much. Like I said, news on TV is boring. But I feel like the anchors are supposed to make it more interactive, like create a conversation that everyone is going to engage in. Even your people watching, the viewers, they need to know like different sides of the story. Don't leave it to be a biased kind of thing, because that's what we usually get. Because someone mentioned something like TV stations, there's like a political influence, maybe the owner is of a different political party, and that is where we are. Like, we're not talking about anything else the other side, like it's biased. So it makes it hard, but it needs to be from all angles. We need to hear all angles of a story. There's something that happens on radio where people call in. I think it also happens on TV. they call in and like share their ideas or request for songs and that. I feel like it would be a good idea, like for people to call in when there's a bulletin or something to share their ideas or to give their opinion of whatever is going on.
Yes, in the interest of time, I think I'm going to take one comment, and Stefan, if I lock you out, I will not have a job next year, so you definitely get a comment.
I just wanted to share or add something on how to make news more interesting. I think it's very important that we become very intentional about what we put out there, okay? And I know that we come from a background, journalism comes from a background whereby the bad news is what attracts attention, right? And I had Sal DJ say that, you know what, news is very, very depressing. And I hear her, because when you actually do tune in and watch or listen, you're like, ah, man, people are dying, there are floods, they're everywhere. And there's something, this I didn't understand until when I joined where I currently work right now, which is KFM. So at KFM, when we're creating prep for the next day, Mr. B will go like, no, our wake-up call has to be a positive call. Like, we can't wake up people who have lost jobs. We have to wake up people who have just gotten jobs, okay? So we sort of balance it. We balance good news and then the bad news that actually is relevant to our audience, okay? So even the news that has a negative impact, we've balanced it with something that's positive. So, which is why I applaud MCI for championing, SOJU, which is solution journalism, which is to show a more positive aspect of news, that there are solutions that are working, there are things that, Ugandans are innovating. So I think it's a great thing to actually balance out news. Have some positive, but also give the negative that is relevant to our audience.
Got it.
All right, and finally, I just want to end by reiterating something that I said yesterday, but for some of the people that weren't here. I think that when it comes to news, how we can be innovative about it, we need to remember that when we are feeding people, we are feeding them on a balanced diet of two things. The first is the content that we are putting out, and the second is the way that we are putting that content out. We need to find ways to make it fun, that not only entertainment, but something aesthetic, because we as human beings, we speak a general language, which is the language of love, the language of music, the language of something we visually love to see. We were trained not to color grade videos we were cutting from the field. Come on, people want to see something beautiful. You can use sound to and add an intensity to it, so that we don't. And the last thing is about the engagement, right? Because even when I feel like one of the reasons why people are loyal to radio is because radio was one of those platforms that first introduced the ability for people to engage with the people that they're listening in, and they've maintained that up to now. We need to do that, because when it comes to TV news, as you said, it's more interesting on YouTube because people can comment. When it comes to TV news, it's boring. First and foremost, the kids don't want to even watch it. The old people, the moms and dads who are watching it, they're saying they're watching it, but they're like the entire time, because we ain't part of it. It's not part of it. And as human beings, we want something we are all part of. And I guess that's why you guys decided to have a discussion where we can ask people. Yeah,
that's true. Stefan, closing comment.
Hi, I'm Stefan from DW. I work as a senior consultant, and thank you for this really open discussion, and it's triggering a lot of emotions. Also for me, this is why I wanted to say something, because this question, is entertainment really the right attribute to describe the news? I mean, if you have worked as a war reporter, I don't need entertainment when I work about Ukraine, for example. But I will take seriously your comment, because I think the question behind is, why are people not relating to news? Why are young people saying, this has nothing to do with my world? And this has a lot to do with the journalism we are living today. The legacy media stick to some rules of doing journalism, so having highly sophisticated reporting. Always now at COP in Egypt, you have the policy makers talking all the time. But how does a normal citizen make sense to it? And why a YouTuber has a better relationship to the community? Because you are talking their language. People are taking care of what you are saying, but people are not taking care if they just see Trump and Biden and whatever every day. And I think this is a big question for the legacy media, how to establish this relationship to their audience. And for this, they must listen and not just go out and say, we know what you want to hear, and we want you to pay for it even. So I think I'm very much on your line, but I would struggle with the assumption that it's a question of music, or is it a question of sound or video? Because I mean, this morning, and this is my last comment, we saw Lamb Sisters. This was just spoken word, and it was amazing. I could relate very much to it. Yeah, the same applies to radio, for example. Thank you.
Professor Nyabuga, do you have a final comment?
I think the issues that I was going to ask about have been responded to, and I think I agree with Stephen, and that's the point that I was going to make. How do you make, for example, issues of death, people starving to death or dying in accidents interesting? It's